The Maze Runner versus the Lord of the Flies. Civilization today has become almost completely reliant on technology. People are governed by laws designed to protect us. Now the society lives by rules, values, and ideals that keep the peace. The world now is organized, convenient, and technically advanced. What would happen if suddenly this civilization disappeared, leaving us with only the things we were wearing, the ideals we were raised with, the things we could find in nature and our instincts? This is exactly what happened to teenagers in both novels, The Maze Runner and Lord of the Flies. In both novels, everyone has to survive until they can be rescued despite the instinct to break all ties with civilization and become savage. The concept of civilization is defined as an advanced social development, an organization made by humans. Savagery, on the other hand, is defined as humans being primitive and uncivilized. In both stories, there are young boys fending for their lives, with limited resources, and no adult supervision, which makes it hard for them to stay sane and civil. There are several examples of civilization versus savagery in The Maze Runner. For example, the main character Thomas is taking a stroll on a path that runs by a graveyard, just outside of the boys' village called the Glade. On Thomas's walk, he hears the sound of sticks snapping coming closer and closer to his position. All of a sudden, Thomas Chase pounces on him and tries to choke him out. Thomas screams and immediately hundreds of boys come running to the graveyard. He pushed and clobbered his attacker. It seemed to be a monster, but he knew it was a glitter. This is a prime example of civilization versus savagery, because the main character Thomas, who represents sanity and civilization, is contrasted with Ben, who represents savagery and insanity. When the primitive boy Ben attacks Thomas, a connection to Lord of the Flies can be made. In Lord of the Flies, the boys are savagely dancing around a bonfire on the beach to celebrate a successful pig hunt. Simon, a civilized boy, is observing their savage dance from an overwatch position. When Simon steps down from his overwatch position onto the beach, the boys mistake Simon for a monster and tear him to shreds with their bare teeth. At once the crowd surged after Simon, poured down the rock, leapt onto him, screamed, struck, bit and tore. There were no words, and no movements but the tearing of teeth and claws. Simon, who represents sanity and civilization, is attacked and killed by a group of insane and savage boys, who have completely lost their minds, much like that of Ben from The Maze Runner. In The Maze Runner, there is a form of civilization that is present in the beginning to the middle of the story, much like in Lord of the Flies. The Maze Runner civilized rules are controlled by multiple leaders, in an old beat-up house within the enclosed community of the Glade. These leaders are referred to as council members, and they vote to make all the important decisions within the Glade. They do this to enforce discipline, and make sure that the rules are being followed. For example, one of the rules is not to murder another glitter. The main character Thomas was attacked by one of the glitters. One of the council members shoots Ben in the cheek with a bow arrow, but it doesn't kill Ben. The next day, the council members decide to banish Ben from the Glade. This means they are going to cuff him up and throw him into the maze with monsters called grievers that will eat him alive, as a punishment for attempted murder. "No!" screamed Ben, spit flying out of his mouth. The form of civilization in Lord of the Flies is very similar to the type of civilization in The Maze Runner. For example, in Lord of the Flies, Ralph, the boys' elected leader, holds the conch meetings to discuss issues, concerns, and rules that should be established. Much like that of the council in The Maze Runner. Whoever holds the conch gets to speak. The only difference is that in Lord of the Flies, if someone did something that was out of line, there were no punishments for it while Ralph was the leader. The civilization in Lord of the Flies failed because there was no law emphasis meant to enforce rules. This let the boys to do basically whatever they wanted, without any punishment to keep order. This allowed the other leader, Jack, to come to power and create chaos for the group of boys. Whereas in The Maze Runner, there are law enforcers who wouldn't allow any laws to be broken. savagery is also expressed by the creators. They have chosen to subject orphans to horrific experiments, though they believe their intentions to be good. Dashner presents a world in which catastrophic events have driven human beings to resort to their most base and savage instincts. The creators believe in their efforts despite the obvious toll. Text compared to real-world issues. Concentration camp compared to Lord of the Flies. The concentration camps in WW2 relates to the Glade, because the Gladers are innocent teenagers taken captive by the wicked. The prisoners in the concentration camps in America were innocent people from Japan that were living in the United States, sent to camps where they had no rights. The strange Pitcairn Island compared to Lord of the Flies. Pitcairn Island is a place so remote, and with a history so bizarre, that until recently it was viewed almost as myth rather than reality. But the events that took place on the tiny island were very real. Settled by a pack of mountaineers in 1790, along with a small group of Polynesians, the island soon became like the famous 1954 novel Lord of the Flies, in which boys descend into savagery and immortality. Faced with physical, social and psychological isolation, along with struggles for power, the Pitcairn Island's population decreased because of murders, suicide, and the remaining descended into incest.